Tanse. Jen Laderoute nitsikason. Gwagit Lake, Alberta hutinia. Wiaha tumoyan uma. Kagihpiawasi wian. 1950s, early 60s and gihwasiun. Gwamatun stahikoy ni gisksin. Gunium ka wiaha tumoyan. Nigisksin. Tanse giflegis na gwakawi no ta gihuigit. Tanse sino agisip matsito, tanse gisip matsehuto, mina kagiksnay maksiya kya gumanot skawi mamskutaman. XP 1950s. Muitsikkonta saka kagihuigi ako magifleg. Gwatapo itigwi. Muyocha ya wichasin ayat nandaw tayo tuhtik. Muy mitsito tapanas ka kuchayawa kuya igayo miyos ko miskanawa. Gwamina ya gikchamaksek. Muy mitsito ke saunihiwa ke gune utapanas ko. Kakiawa gikchamakso. Magakakiawa ke miwichito. Mustahik ko ini gisksinum kawya hatimoyan. Nipagsimon. Tami ko hatimona. Hi, my name is Jen Laderoute, and I'm from Gift Lake, Alberta. I am telling a series of stories, childhood stories, on YouTube. I was a child in the 1950s and early 60s, and I remember a lot. And I know my childhood stories are just as precious to anybody else and their childhood stories. I'm not trying to say mine are special, but I feel that the 1950s was a very different kind of life. Very different way of living, the values, very different community, very different ways to connect for sure. And it was just, I think, a different time. And those stories need to be recorded so that our young people can hear them. Hopefully they would be interested. So today I am telling about my early school years. I started school in 1959. There was no such thing as a kindergarten or play school. We just went straight into grade 1. I'm old enough to have attended school in a one-room schoolhouse up to grade 4. In Gift Lake, we had 2 one-room schoolhouses. So I attended the one that was from grade 1 to 3, and then I did grade 4 with the older classes. One teacher taught all the kids. That must have been a tough job. We had no running water, well, we had electric lights, which I believe we must have had a generator, but no central heating in our school. We had a wood stove for heat. But the school would be nice and warm when we got there because it was somebody's job to go make a fire. One of the first things I need to talk about, because it was such a traumatic experience, and it happened when I first started school. A few days in, probably I found this out the first day of school, but we couldn't speak Cree. We weren't allowed to, and that was our first language. Every kid that started school there, Cree was their first language. I remember tapping my older brother, who was a seat ahead of me, and asking him, Edward, tansi ito'y teacher. Muyanin stotawaw. Edward, what is teacher saying? I don't understand her. So as soon as my big brother turned around to answer me, the teacher was right there, already standing by my desk with an angry look on her face. And she yelled at me. I didn't know what she was saying. I didn't have a clue. I did understand that she was real mad at me and that I had to go to where she was pointing. I had seen other kids get sent to the corner. So I knew the drill. I really didn't know what I did wrong. I had heard the other kids say, we couldn't speak Cree in school, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I was confused, totally confused, and embarrassed, humiliated to stand in the corner. That was the goal. That was how we got punished. We didn't get the strap. We got humiliated. During that time, our school was the provincial government responsibility, like directly. We didn't have Northland School Division yet. And the residential school mindset was still evident and practiced in our little school. I didn't know I was supposed to use another language when I spoke to the teacher. I just thought she would understand me, and I didn't know another language existed. When you're 5 years old and you try to communicate the only way you know how and then get punished for it, it has a huge impact. This experience impacted me into adulthood. For many years, I was ashamed of my language because when I was small, I was made to feel that it was bad. I was ashamed and I did not speak Cree in front of white people until I was older, like maybe late 20s, when I realized, hey, there's nothing wrong with Cree. Why am I ashamed of it? So, ano tigwa? Pagwita hanggang nihiyawan. Pagwispi. We miwihtaman igaskihtayan epikskuyan nihiyawiun. Mina nimamihtsin. Nimamihtihigwan nihiyawiun nipikskuyan. I just said, but today I will speak Cree anywhere, anytime. Because I am happy that I speak my language and I'm very proud of my language. So overall, my school years were very good. I did well, but this is one of the most negative experiences in all of my school years. I so remember it very clearly because it made me feel that there was something wrong with me. Moving on to other topics, we had no gym, no library. Things we take for granted today, of course, we did not have those things. We didn't have much of a playground. We had homemade swings and a homemade teeter-totter. The other playground equipment, which was not that safe, I'll tell you, but the teacher didn't stop us. The fence around the school and like the government buildings that were in the compound was another piece of playground equipment. We ran on top of it. We ran around on the fence, on top of the fence. Sounds weird, but the fence was made of lumber. It was a lumber fence. And on top of the fence, there was about a 6-inch plywood, or not plywood, board that laid flat on the fence all the way around. So we had 6 inches to run on. And that was what we did during recess. A few kids fell off. I know I fell off at the highest corner and just knocked the breath out of me, knocked the wind out of me. I thought I was dying. Also, the colony supervisor, he was called, he was the government appointed administrator that looked after things in the community. Well, he was tired of young people raiding his gardens at night, his garden, because that was what young people did then, raid gardens for fun. So he electrified the fence around his garden. And since he lived in close proximity to the school, the fence was easily accessible during school hours. So in no time at all, the kids discovered that touching the fence, they would hold hands or touch each other and have a line. So the electric current would course through each of them, and the one at the end would like sit down, right? So I never did it myself. I was too scared. Anyway, the kids would hold hands, and the last one in line would sit down. The first kid in the line touched the fence, and there went the current right through everyone and into the ground. And they did that during recess, during like whenever we were outside. That was like a fun thing to do, and they're quite dangerous probably. I don't know if it's bravery, daring, or crazy. Another thing is in the early 60s, maybe 61, we moved from where we were living in the middle of Gift Lake to just on the edge of the community. So we ended up being the kids that lived the furthest from the school. We lived about a mile away. And so we took lunch. The only kids that took lunch. So that was different. That was cause for teasing. The kids teased us and said, "Bannock sandwiches, bannock sandwiches. Bet you have lard on your bannock." "No, we don't. We have bread sandwiches." "Well, show us your lunch then. Show us what you have in your bag." Mom baked bread especially for our lunches. So, we didn't have to take bannock for lunch, but it didn't matter. They still thought we had bannock sandwiches. They probably went home and ate bannock while we had our bread lunch. I'm having some lagoon tea. Wild mint. Well, in my day, we still had the strap. Capital punishment. The strap was a thick piece of leather with little knobs on it. Look it up on the internet. And I think it was banned sometime in the 1970s. But it was brutal. Some days it didn't take much for kids to get into trouble and get the strap. Because I think it depended on the mood that the teacher was in, whether they got the strap or not, or a different kind of punishment. Now, The severity of the strap, the number of times the kids were struck, depended on how mad the teacher was. At least looking back, that's what I can see. There was no rules about it, I guess. And they would get the strap in front of the whole class. It was very humiliating, and some cried because the strap was designed to cause major pain. I felt so sorry for them. I wanted to cry along with them. Sometimes they'd be taken into the office to get the strap, and that was probably preferable because then, it wouldn't happen in front of the class. One time, my younger sisters, they were in grade 3 or 4. The teacher got mad at the whole class for something. And he punished the whole class. He made them kneel on a hard tile floor. A hard tile floor. For the whole afternoon. Fern had blisters on her knees. And she had to miss several days of school. A couple of other students got sick. One threw up. Another one fainted. But that was the things that teachers did and got away with. Because at that time, our parents didn't march over to the school and, stick up for us. It was like we were at the mercy of the teachers until we got home. They did, because I think at the time, it was true of my mom. They just took what the white people said to be what it was. They didn't question. They didn't speak up for themselves. I remember one time, and this is not even related to school, but this is what would happen. One time there was a knock on the door. And a knock on the door meant a stranger, because when I was a kid, people didn't knock on the doors. They just walked in, opened the door and walked in. So Mom said, "Come in." And 2 RCMP officers came in. I had never seen RCMP officers before, so this was strange. And frightening, really. I knew they had some authority. That's all I knew. And they didn't tear up our house or make a mess, but they came in and said, "We're looking for home brew." They used to call it moose milk at the time. So they said, "We're looking for moose milk. And we're going to look in your house." So Mom didn't question them. They didn't have anything, what do you call those, to be able to come in and look. A warrant, search warrant. They didn't have anything, a piece of paper to give my mom. She just said, "You can look. You won't find anything." But that was authority, right? Not to be questioned. That's just an example. Now, this next story is rather funny, but not funny. It's funny, not funny. One day, I don't know, I was in grade 5 maybe, but one day the teacher walked in, and he walked in with purpose, and he thumped his books down on his desk. So we're all looking at each other. Something is up, but are we in trouble? We didn't know. So he started, and he said, he directed which kid, like he directed us to move our desks around. So he said, you move your desk over there, and you move your desk over there, and so on. In the end, we ended up with 3 rows of desks. 2 rows had 4 students in the row. The middle row was long. It was all the way back to the back of the wall. So like we were still wondering what's going on. It kind of looked funny. And then he proceeded to tell us, okay, this row over here, and it had 4 students in it. No, he started off with saying, I'm giving each row a name. That's what he said. He said, this row over here, and he was referring to the first row of 4 students. He said, I'm calling this row the Stoopy Doops. The Stoopy Doops. And he said, because they're stupid. And some of us giggled, like it was funny because we didn't know that it was so wrong. And then the middle row, the longest row, he said, I'm calling this row the Arf and Arfs. What kind of name is that? Anyway, the Arf and Arfs were, he said, was because they were half smart and they were half stupid. Okay, well, fine. We were wondering what our row was going to be called. I was in the last row of 4 students. And he said, and this row over here, I'm calling this row the Bright Lights because they're smart. I was so happy to be a bright light. And, we poor row that were given the name Stoopy Doops, like, we teased, we laughed at them. We didn't know any, like, that was, again, that was so wrong. Anyway, it's unbelievable. When I figured out there was grades, like grade 1, 2, 3, up to whatever, I didn't know up to what grade school went to, so I asked my mom. And she told me it goes up to grade 12. So right then and there, I determined that I was going to get to that grade 12. And I did. My high school story is sort of another story for another day. I must have learned English pretty good in grade 1. Because when I passed to grade 2, I ran home as fast as my little legs could carry me. I burst into the house and I told my mom, I'm in grade 2. I passed to grade 2. And all day long, I remember, all day long I kept saying, I'm in grade 2 now, right on the dot. I'm in grade 2 now, right on the dot. I was so proud. And anyway, I did grade 2 and 3 in 1 year. So that put me ahead of grade levels throughout my school years. And I was 10 years old in grade 6. My classmates were all older than me and bigger than me because I was a tiny, skinny little kid. I really was. And anyway, one day the principal walks in and he says, I'm moving the grade 6 to the senior classroom. So the senior classroom had grade 7, 8, and 9. We had up to grade 9 in the school at the time. Today we have up to grade Yeah, we do have up to grade 9. Sorry. Anyway, so there I was, 10 years old, in the senior class, in the same class as 16, 17-year-olds. For real. Young adults, older teenagers. And the reason why they would be that old in the grade 8, 9 level at that time is because some kids didn't start school until they were like 8 years old. Or some kids may have failed a grade or two and didn't get moved on. Because back then, if you failed a grade, you repeated it. So they ended up being, older. And I remember my second oldest brother was in the same class as me. He was in grade 9. It was not a good experience for me. I could do the work. I could keep up with them. But socially, it was not good. As I mentioned, I was a skinny little kid and we didn't have a gym, so we had to go outside to play any type of sports or activity. So whenever the class had to pick teams, I knew I was going to be the last one picked, of course, and I was. And the team that got me would complain, would be like, we end up with Jenny, like blah, blah, blah. So I've never liked sports since. I've never played sports since then. But I loved school. And yes, some of these things that happened did happen. But overall, school was a good experience for me. Maybe because I loved learning, and I still do. And just one more thing that I have to say, because all older people talk about the good old days of I walked to school a mile away in knee-deep snow and minus 35 degrees, because I did. We did. There was no bus. And we went to school in any kind of weather. Snow up to our knees because it had snowed so much overnight. The older brothers, or the brothers, would go ahead of us girls to make a trail. And, they would be having a difficult time getting through that deep snow because it would have maybe snowed all night and was still snowing and piling up. Because during my childhood years, the weather was very different. It was very cold, and the snow, like we had a lot of snow. Winters today are very mild. But Mom still sent us to school no matter what the weather. There were days when I would look out the window and it would be so cold, it would be foggy, and the snow would crunch as we walked. And there was no asking to stay home. It was go to school. We used to stop and warm up at this St. Cyrs. An older couple, they had a little log house there, and they would expect us. Mom asked them, and of course they were very willing to let us stop there and warm up, which was, about halfway to school. So we would stop. They would have a nice blazing fire going, knowing we would come. And we'd come over this little hill, and I'd see this log house, and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it there. I remember being so cold that my cheeks felt like they were cracking. My legs so numb that I couldn't even feel them. It was tough. It was hard. But we didn't know it. We didn't know it was hard. We just did it. To us, it was just life. We didn't know anything else. Looking back on it, it was, yes, it was hard. But we lived. And we had very good school attendance. And we all did well. I loved learning. I loved school. I still love learning. I learn every day. I believe in the concept of lifelong learning. And I still read books. When I go to bed, I spend about an hour reading, and that's a good thing. Keeps your brain growing, active. And I've learned so much during my work life because I made it a point to learn, to learn, to learn. And what more can I say about it? I hope you love learning. And I hope that you enjoyed my story today. Ego se maga.